Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Your Legislators, a production of KRWG Broadcasting. Your Legislators is a public service program providing our viewing audience in southern New Mexico the opportunity to hear about important legislative issues directly from their elected representatives in Santa Fe. Here's your host, Sloan Patton.
All right, thanks for joining us. Well, with just a handful of days left to introduce bills here in this short 30-day session, it's well underway. It doesn't take long when you only have 30 days. Well, here with us from Santa Fe in the studios there is Senator Lee Cotter. He's our Republican senator from District 36 in Las Cruces. Senator, thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Well, I'd like to talk about how this is the second time that I've seen you, and it's been a year since. What's changed this year compared to last year? It's your second year up there in Santa Fe.
Well, I think the biggest change is we've had a small improvement in the economy, which has allowed the next fiscal year to have slightly more money than we had in the last year. So the difficulties of arriving at a budget should be much easier this year.
Well, this session's a lot shorter too. How's it been so far working with only 30 days to get everything done?
Well, it's very similar because while the days are shorter, the subjects are much narrower. So we pretty much can only, without the governor's assistance, can only introduce bills that affect the budget. So instead of having 1,000 bills or 1,200, 1,400, there might only be 400 to 600.
Right. Well, I'd like to jump right into one of the bills that you've just introduced. It's called SB 172. And tell me about that bill. What are you trying to do with that bill?
Well, this past year, I discovered that the Spaceport Authority had made a choice with Doña Ana County and Sierra County's gross receipts dollars, where when we passed the bond issue many years ago, we allocated a portion of our gross receipts to the repayment of debt encumbered when we built the spaceport. So, something on the order of 25% of the cost went to those two counties. However, this past year, we had $739,000 that was collected in gross receipts tax that was over and above the required debt repayment. And unfortunately, the Spaceport Authority, with the New Mexico Finance Authority's approval, decided that they would put it into their operating budget, which in the original discussed agreement 8 or 10 years ago, the operations was supposed to be paid for by users of the facility and also by the state of New Mexico. So I felt it was quite unfair that the Spaceport Authority would extend the amount of repayment that the citizens would have to pay and make the taxes frankly higher.
What are your thoughts on the spaceport just in general?
Well, I think it's an opportunity for the United States to access space. It's been a little bit slower than I'd hoped, but I think we still have a good opportunity to make it be profitable and also expand our tourism and our business climate to bring in companies that are targeting space travel.
Are you worried at all that introducing a bill like this could prevent spaceport from moving forward or slow them down at all?
I in fact do not. When they came and presented their budget before the Finance Oversight Committee that I was on, their dream was laid out. And so pretty much it is the state's obligation to fund their operations to the level that the state wants to do. In this case, they pretty much got to run around the legislature, which I, even as a new member, I think is quite disappointing.
Right. You know, it seems like, just comparing it to things that happen in other cities, obviously not many other places have spaceports that they're trying to build, but it seems a lot like a professional football team or baseball team that goes into a city, and you always hear about these stories of a team that goes in and they have this long list of demands, and the city doesn't want to pay for them, of course, but they usually end up paying for just about everything that the team wants, because the team can always just use the excuse of, well, we'll just leave. We'll just go to Houston or we'll go to Dallas.
Well, I kind of have a little bit different than that, because the Spaceport Authority's budget doesn't have anything to do with the team, in this case, people who want to launch. They've had 20 or 22 vertical launches at the spaceport so far, and all of the costs associated with those launches were paid for by the companies that were involved. We're really only talking about operations, and that includes things like fire protection, 24-hour armed guard, general management. When we decide to start flights, there will be an air traffic controller function that will be done by the spaceport, and I'm sure there'll be mundane things like keeping the lights on and pumping water.
Right.
So
right.
it's a little different than the cost of a stadium for a professional team or something like that, because the money actually is going towards legitimate activities that are on the ground and at the spaceport.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we'll keep in touch to find out what happens with that bill as it moves forward, and find out what discussion happens on that. There are, of course, only a few more days to introduce bills. Are there any other bills that you're planning on introducing before the deadline?
Well, I've already attempted to introduce two others.
Okay.
One is to lower the age at which you are exempt from needing to pay New Mexico income tax from the current law, which is 100 years old, to 97. There should be a limit to the amount of money and the facilities that you're utilizing within the state that individuals should be required to pay. And also, I'm trying to expand the opportunities for low-income housing. One of the problems we have with the state right now is we offer, or one of the opportunities I might say, is we offer a tax credit for people who want to build or refurbish low-income housing. In the event that the project fails, the state isn't able to recover their money because there is a deed restriction that requires them to take below market rates on their rental units. And in order to maximize the state's recovery when a project fails, we need to be able to remove that restriction so that the new purchaser could then use market rates as their justification for payment to the state when the project has failed.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Well, could you explain a little bit more about the income tax one? I don't know if I'm too clear on it. So it changes what would the new age be if your bill were to pass?
The age in this stage of the bill will be 97 years old.
Okay.
Current law calls for 100 years old. So if you're 101, you owe no New Mexico income tax. No, I don't know how many 100-year-old and up there are. And frankly, I don't know how many 97s there are.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to lower that age, and in fact, it's a phased-in process, because we'll lower it to 97, and then I hope to lower it below that.
Right. Well, I think people that make it to that age certainly deserve something.
I certainly think so.
Well, I'd like to move on now to talk a little bit more about this proposed budget that the governor has put forth and that everybody's working on. 60% of the budget Governor Martinez would like to go to water infrastructure. Is that something that you're trying to support as well, or have you seen some problems getting that 60% allocated?
Well, it's always difficult. Now that we're talking, as opposed to the budget, we're talking about capital outlay.
Capital outlay, that's right.
So that's a little bit different. That is, the source of those funds are from mostly oil and gas production that is done each year, and the state decides to borrow the money to create those capital funds. And specifically on water projects, while I do agree that it's very difficult to get the legislature on board with any program, I haven't seen any of the details, but I would really enjoy having the governor attempt to do something on a grand scale, lay a water line to the Mississippi River, and bring water to New Mexico when the Mississippi River is flooding.
Right.
I think things like that would truly change the course of New Mexico.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure what kind of project she's proposing, but a project like that I would completely support.
Right. Well, that would certainly be nice if we could tap into some of the flooding that has been going on out east. I know for sure. We were just in Santa Teresa not too long ago, talking to her to the lieutenant governor rather, about some water projects down there. They've been having trouble treating the water and storing the water, and so as far as I understand, that's what a lot of the money would go towards, is treating and storing water. And how do you think that the Texas lawsuits might play into some of this, really battle over water?
Well, the Santa Teresa issues are less significant from that lawsuit than all the farming up and down the valley, in my district and also in the southern part of the valley. But
how do you figure?
The communities won't be affected that much by that lawsuit, but farmers and their employees, and frankly all of us trying to eat, could be radically changed if the lawsuit went the wrong way.
How's that?
Well, they're attempting to stop us from using water to farm with. And that is a crisis, frankly, if they prevail. Now, who knows when? I'm not a lawyer, so most court cases seem to take way longer than I would have expected. But if El Paso prevails, then almost any new commercial well, or even in the last 50-year commercial well, will not be permitted to pump, based on my understanding of the lawsuit. So that kind of thing has a huge impact for southern New Mexico.
Right. Well, southern New Mexico is certainly dependent upon farming. I mean, from your experience, do you remember any stories growing up here about farming and what that water means to farming?
Well, I experience it daily. I've got many friends that farm today, but because of the expense of the water as well as the quality of the water, many people can't farm today. So we, as an example, we used to have something on the order of 30,000 acres growing chili, and we're somewhere south of 15,000 acres running now. So we have seen an impact on market conditions as well as water quality and water situations that are affecting us today. So this lawsuit is just one more impact that, frankly, I don't know that we can afford.
Yeah. Well, I know that there have been a lot of advancements in farming throughout the years. Do we use less water now than we used to?
I think it's unquestionable that we use less water. However, we still need a high quality of water, and some of my constituents are struggling with increased salt content. And so if we wind up with salt water coming out, we won't be able to grow pretty much any crop.
Right. All right. Well, what do you see as some of the future things that you'll be working on, in the next several years? in water? I mean, what do you think are going to be the biggest challenges in the next 5 years?
Well, I don't know that the lawsuit will be settled in the next 5 years, but we certainly need to hope for rain, and I certainly hope the governor will move her efforts towards going to a source like the Mississippi River and acquiring more water. Mm-hmm. If we had a pipe from east-west, much like interstates, we would be able to take water from places that are flooding and deliver it to places that are a little bit short. I think that is the direction we have to do, and we're just going to have to do it someday. Yeah. Whether we have the vision for today, that's yet to be seen.
Yeah. It would certainly be an ambitious project. Do you think it's something that we would see in our lifetime happen? I mean, would we see a pipe go from the Mississippi from out east to New Mexico?
Well, in my career, I worked for several pipeline companies, right. And it's certainly not technologically difficult. It is financially difficult, right. And it requires a lot of will, right. Much like the interstate system required a lot of push, a lot of dedicated people that got it to be passed. So I do think it's achievable. Yes, if we started having it rain profusely for many years, the pressure would be off. But we still do live in a desert, and we still need to do whatever we can to remedy the issues.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about some farmers here. You know, tireless folks that wake up before dawn and get to work, and those people really, they work hard in our community, and any of us can drive down the road to Mesilla or past Mesilla and see people probably, you know, getting ready for the day on their farms. Those are jobs that we have in the area. What about some of the other jobs and job growth that you see? I mean, how can Las Cruces in southern New Mexico generate more jobs, do you think?
Well, one of our recent successes has been Union Pacific. I don't know if you've taken your cameras to Santa Teresa, but I do believe that is the most exciting activity we're going to see, certainly in the next 5 years, maybe longer. Their opportunities appear to be endless. Their function is to transship or repurpose the cargo freight from California that came in from Asia, and put it on trains that go to different cities within the United States. Mm-hmm. Right now in California, they just put it on a train as fast as they can, and then when they move it in the future, in 6 or 8 months, when they move it to Santa Teresa, they will take all those boxes and put them on trains to the city they're destined for. Mm-hmm. But it does more than that, because it brings in and out crews. I would wager a huge number of people will spend the night in the region every single night. So we have hotels, we have restaurants, we have housing that all will be created by doing that. Mm-hmm. Now, the most important thing for northern Doña Ana County, or northern even southern Las Cruces, mm-hmm. is to build a road that incorporates New Mexico in that activity. We need a road from the port of entry at Santa Teresa to the airport in Las Cruces, that exit. That would give us an opportunity for an infinite number of plants that could serve different activities that happen in Mexico and farther south. It would also allow for direct transportation, because one of the things that the Union Pacific facility is likely to do is to place those cars on trucks.
Right.
So rather than going to El Paso with those trucks, they could go up a not so highly used highway and get on get on points west on I-10 or go over to I-25 and go north. So that's one of the things that the state of New Mexico needs to consider over the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Do you think we should try to improve the connections between those places and I-10, or just build a whole new road from Santa Teresa all the way up to the airport?
Well, we're improving I-10 as we speak. We're doing a lot of bridges. There's a couple on the books for I-25 as well in Las Cruces. But we need to start the process. Mm-hmm. And I believe the road from Santa Teresa to Las Cruces up on the mesa, so we're not interfering with farmland, but a little bit on the mesa would allow us to have a vast new opportunity for industrialization.
Mm-hmm. Now, we all know with these budgets, it's nice to be able to do what you want, and everybody wants to be able to pay for the things that they want, but what kind of things are we going to have to cut? Because you have to cut something.
Are we still talking about the budget, or are we talking about the capital outlay?
Well, let's talk about both. So let's talk about the capital outlay first, because that one, is going to directly impact most of us the most. What sort of things?
It will affect cities and counties and the local area quickly. Mm-hmm. In fact, if we do water projects at all, frankly, it will impact it. But It's impacted already. We probably have 25 or 30% less than we had a year ago. Mm-hmm. And that's just strictly a product of revenues and interest rates.
Well,
as we see interest rates go up, because we recognize that all of capital outlay is borrowed money. Mm. So we have to repay it over 10 or 20 years, depending on the life of the project that's being proposed.
Right. Well, is there anything you want to cut specifically?
Specifically, so far they haven't given me a list of the projects. Mm-hmm. So being able to say you might want to cut one project or another, when you don't have a list, it's pretty difficult. So I would expect that over the next 3 weeks, as we have left, mm-hmm. It will become more identified. But up to now, to my knowledge, we don't have a list. Hmm. Now, the general budget, of course, that's revenues that we have coming in. Of course, this budget is FY15.
Right.
But it is a forecast of revenues we will have coming in from gross receipts, oil and gas, income tax, corporate income tax. But that budget is a little bit higher than it was, almost as high as $6.1 billion is the rumor, mm-hmm. Almost as high as it was at the peak in 2007 or 8 or 9 or whenever the highest amount of money for the state budget was. Mm-hmm. But we must understand that most of that money is likely to go to education.
Right.
We spend a little under 60% of our budget on education. Do
you agree with that?
So a substantial amount will go to that. Now, we do have a risk for the future years, and I'm not sure what we're going to do. We have agreed with the president, and we have expanded Medicaid to people that make more money.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you agree with the education part of the budget? I mean, do you like that much goes to education, or would you want to change it?
Well, I do believe that education is very important in our state. It provides a lot of jobs. It provides me and likely you the opportunity to reach our potential in our life. Mm-hmm. So are we spending the right amount? It's very, very hard to identify that. It would be nice if we were able to be more successful at reading. It would be better if we had no one who was able to graduate from high school that can't read. Mm-hmm. So I'm in favor of a few changes. I'd love to see us retain people until they can read in 3rd grade, which I believe would happen immediately, but right now we can't quite get that requirement through the legislature.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that it's hard to say. It's hard to say, especially as a politician. I don't know if I'd be able to do it, to say what I would cut. But is there anything that you can tell us that you do know for sure? If it comes up, you're going to say, listen, we don't need to pay for this. We can use this money on something else.
Well, in fact, if you look at our budget, there's almost nowhere to cut. Okay, we spend 58% of our money on education. We spend 28% of our money on Medicaid. And we spend 10% of our money on the courts and our prisons. Mm-hmm. So in order to cut any of those, you're gonna work with now the education budget is 85% salaries and benefits. Mm-hmm. So if we're going to cut that budget, and we're raising it right now, it's something between 100 and 150 million. We will be increasing that budget, I predict. But if we cut that budget, we'll have to cut someone's salary, or we'll have to cut someone's job. Medicaid, most of the money, while most of the participants are children, most of the money is spent on indigent, elderly, and nursing homes.
Right. Well, we only have about 30 seconds left. If you can, I know it's hard. I know it's a horrible question, but I have to have an answer before we go. I'll come up to Santa Fe and find you. No, I'm kidding. What will you have to cut from the budget, do you think?
Well, if we had less money than we have now, we probably would cut all of those areas. We probably would not cut Medicaid. We probably would cut education. We probably also would cut the court system, and even correction officers and so forth.
Okay.
All of those are not necessary in this case.
All right. Well, Lee Cotter, Senator, thanks so much for your time. I know that's a hard question to answer, but you can catch the next YourLegislators next Saturday at 12:30. Thanks for joining us today.